Thank you for sharing that with us. So, you mentioned you had a brother. Could you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, his name is Anthony. He is 11 years old, in 5th grade in Deerfield Community School, which is a K through 8 program. As I mentioned earlier, he also has an anxiety disorder.
Great. So, what was the process like for Anthony to be diagnosed with this anxiety disorder?
Well, originally we thought he had a cognitive disability, just because he wouldn't respond to any commands, really, when we would talk to him. And then we found out, just because of the multitude of ear infections that he was constantly having, is he was essentially deaf. So once he had surgery to fix those, he just kind of leveled out, actually started, talking more and like responding to us. But then we noticed that he had trouble dealing with like sudden changes in plans or directions on like anything he was doing. Like if a video game like changed or something like that, or if someone was running late, he would just not be able to handle it really well. So he was seeing a psychiatrist, and then he told us that in all likelihood he just had a really, at that point, a severe anxiety disorder.
So what types of interventions or accommodations does Anthony have set in place at school?
When he gets really worked up, he's allowed to leave the classroom and go to a resource room just to calm down. He isn't separated from other classes. He takes he's in the same room as all the kids. It's just whenever things tend to get too much for him, he's allowed to leave and recollect himself and then come back and rejoin the class. Also, he has a reading group, just because, he kind of just gets things done at a certain pace, and if other people don't get them done or keep up with him, he tends to lose focus, and he also tends to get anxious and generally mean. So he has his own like special reading group that is specifically tailored for him, with other kids who have the same issue.
So besides for the reading group, he's included in all his classes. He's not pulled out at any time.
He takes everything he spends the day essentially with all the kids, except for once or twice a week when the reading group meets.
How does he manage his anxiety at school?
He was taught by the psychiatrist a couple techniques just a couple ways to think about certain things, and it's like years in the making that he's more or less just learned how to accept things that aren't necessarily in his control, and that's really how he deals with things. Because beforehand he would just not listen to a teacher, have to go into another room and just totally decompress in a very mean and unproductive manner, and then have to rejoin the class, and we'd constantly get told about what Anthony did this time or something like that, because he was just, generally speaking, mean. And so he was taught to think about things differently, and now he's able to stop, understand that it's no one's fault, and then go about his business.
So you seem to kind of be talking about how he was before and some improvements that you've seen. What any other kind of improvements that you've seen in Anthony since his diagnosis?
And that's really it. It's one of those things where it's not just academic. It's like his whole personality and demeanor's more or less changed. He's like before, when if you were running even 5 minutes late, he'd be sitting in the back, almost hyperventilating, in the back of the car. Or if he was having trouble, and homework was taking too long, he would start to freak out, hyperventilate, and just not be able to focus. Now he just settles down and he does it, and if it's still too much, he understands that he can just take a break and it's not the end of the world, and he can go back to it. And then other changes. It's really it. And I suspect part of it just comes with like a maturity process as like he gets older. But those are the immediate changes that I've seen.
What about socially? Has he struggled socially? How has he improved socially?
Oh, yeah. He burned a. The fifth grade teacher, he's in fifth grade now, and the fifth grade teacher told us that he's starting to make friends again because since he wouldn't respond well to people who didn't get things as quickly as he did, because he's generally speaking academically very strong, and so if people weren't getting things as quickly as he would just casually make jokes about how they were dumb as a way for him to deal with it. And then he would get mad about it if they still didn't like get better. And then he just basically burned a lot of bridges at school with kids. And ever since he's been taught how to handle things differently, she told us that his kids are opening up to him again just because they don't view him as like this jerk who's really smart.
And how do you think that makes Anthony feel?
Definitely a lot better because there'd be times a couple of years ago where he would go to a party and just like all the kids would bully him for the entire party, like a birthday party, and like cheer when he left essentially just because they really didn't like him. Now he actually has friends that he can talk to and go hang out with, and they enjoy his company.
What about like extracurricular wise?
Extracurricular wise, he has to do like free-flowing, non-stoppage sports, like soccer or basketball, really. He can't do baseball just because, he couldn't handle the fact that other kids were having a hard time they were having a hard time hitting a ball off a tee or, like, stopping a ground ball, and he would just occasionally come off as mean, and, so that was a sport that he wasn't really able to do, for extracurricular activities. Trying to think.
I know there's Boy Scouts and Greek school. So what about in those areas?
In those areas, the way that Greek school is structured, it's more or less they're told that they have to finish a whole lesson plan, and then they're let alone to go at their own pace. So that never really bothers him because he just finishes it quickly and then he goes about his business playing or doing whatever else he wants. Boy Scouts was more or less the same as school. For a while, kids just didn't really know, open up to him because it'd be the same kids as in his class that he'd be in the same troop with, and they just would be really cold to him. But lately, they've been opening up to him since he hasn't been, mean to them essentially or too high maintenance in their eyes.
So how have your parents kind of dealt with the whole situation, kind of from his diagnosis to where he is now?
Well, they generally deal with it pretty poorly. As in, one is high-strung and, is a teacher, but doesn't really know how to teach young kids. So if when he doesn't get something immediately, like telling time when he was doing that unit, early, second grade, I imagine, or first grade or something. That she just couldn't handle it and just eventually just devolved to her just, wondering why he didn't get it and just almost yelling, and so I took over for that. But, and then the other one just has, is a lot better and more understanding. It's just, he is more the same, just to a lesser degree. So they're both really high-strung, and they don't necessarily see it as much as like see how they affect him. But you know, they don't really handle it the best that they could at all, in my eyes.
What do you think they think about Anthony kind of moving forward as he grows up and as he becomes a grown-up, and in the future, how do they kind of see how his anxiety is going to affect him moving forward?
Academically, they don't think it's going to affect him just because he's really bright. They're worried that the only thing that does worry them is that if he progresses past like the level that the subject is teaching and it's easy to him, then he becomes extremely disengaged. So they're worried that essentially he could become bored with school at some point and not do as well as he possibly could. That's really their only worry.
And what about you? What do you see Anthony doing 10 years from now?
10 years from now? Oh, I don't know. I really don't. Just because he's so young, so, you know. Like, he could be in college, he could not be in college, he could be doing his own thing. I typically see him being a normal 21-year-old. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.